Coming to you live from my parents' house. What's up, everybody? Episode 22 of the Changavi show is back. We're here. I know it's coming out on a Saturday, but excuse me if I want to have a couple lazy days in my week. And yeah, I'm not going to apologize. Anyway, no, I was trying to do something with that, but it really didn't go anywhere. Thank you for joining me for episode 22 here of the show. Got a lot to talk about this week. I know I kind of came on here on Tuesday. I was a little desperate for ideas. On Instagram, I shouted, I tried to shout to the heavens, but I shouted to you guys instead, put it up on my Instagram, basically asking for a couple headlines, uh, things to look into. A couple people shared some stuff, so I appreciated that. We'll be using those on future shows as well as this show. So you might see your suggestions in the headlines. So that's exciting. But other than that, it on Tuesday it was looking like a light week. I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? But a lot of stuff happened in the back half of this week, so time to recap everything. And for those of you that are expecting me to recap Joe Biden and the recent terror raid that happened literally yesterday in Syria that was announced, I will be covering that except on the next episode of this. So you will not see it here, but maybe in the next week. I want to get more information, do my research, make sure everything is nuanced, and I'm not just reciting headlines. And I think that's important. You need to have a nuanced take and a clear kind of analysis. So that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, let's get started with the show because we got a lot to do, and I'm racing against my computer battery as I always do. How am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. I'd say that every week, and honestly, this week I can't say anything less. The weather has been fantastic out here in the Bay Area. I cannot complain. Um, Dude, it feels like like for my Bay Area natives, doesn't it kind of feel like summer? All of a sudden. It's weird how nice the weather has been. It's been cold at night, but in the daytime, it's like real nice. Like you can go outside in shorts and go on runs and do whatever outdoor activities it is you do, and be relatively okay. It's pretty nice. In terms of how else I'm doing, like this January was very busy. In terms of like I had a lot of weekends where I was doing something, where I was going to a show, going to a concert, going to a game, whatever that may have been, football, playoffs, whatever. So I was pretty busy with stuff. But now it's like the Niners are out of the playoffs, the Warriors are heading into All-Star break, events are starting to calm down for a bit here. So heading into February, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, I got some time for myself. Yes! I'm so excited. So that means more content for you guys. So be grateful. Hashtag blessed. So I'm excited for that kind of more relaxed, kind of less go 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 lifestyle here for this weekend, and for a lot of upcoming weekends. Because I'm pretty sure I don't have very many plans, which is exciting. Except for work. That's what I do. I just when I don't have plans, I work. So making money or relaxing or doing homework. That's pretty much or doing this. Those are pretty much the only 4 things I wanna do right now, except homework. I really don't wanna do homework. That's anyway, though, I'm doing okay, and, I'm not dying, so I think that's all you guys really care about, so let's move on to the actual show that we have planned today. So, we're gonna do a couple sports topics, but the first one I wanna get into here is something that kind of came to light, earlier this week, I think Tuesday, if I wanna be more exact. Or Tuesday? Tuesday, yeah. Tuesday. Um, and basically, for those of you that don't know, there's been some stirrings in the NFL embrace recently due to the fact of this man, Brian Flores. So those of you who are probably asking who don't follow sports, before you skip this topic, I think this is important for everybody to know. So let's go through the basic facts of what's going on with Brian Flores. Okay, Brian Flores is an NFL coach. He coached Miami Dolphins. He was fired earlier this year. Uh, People attributed it to a variety of reasons, but it was a suspect firing when it did happen. Brian Flores had led Miami to 2 winning seasons. A team that typically in the last 25 years has not seen a lot of winning was finally, for once, actually relevant in the playoff conversation. And things were looking up for Miami, but they fired the head coach, basically the guy who was in charge of the regime, to some extent, Brian Flores. This week, so that firing took place a few weeks ago, but this week, Brian Flores basically has come back and filed a lawsuit in the NFL, filed a lawsuit in, I believe, one of the courts in New York against the NFL, and he is suing three franchises. I believe it's the Broncos, Giants, and the Dolphins, the team that recently fired him, in practices being racist towards him. So he's basically filing racism against several franchises of the NFL. So that is kind of insane. So obviously those are bold claims, right? So let's kind of unpack that and see like where can we what racism? What like that's a big word. So let's kind of see what he's saying. So those of you that don't know, Brian Flores is an African American coach. That was obvious enough by me saying this. So basically, here's what Flores is alleging. This is all according to Brian Flores' lawsuit. This is the evidence and the structure of his claim that he's using to argue that racism took place against him. So way back in 2019, I believe this is when Brian Flores first got to Miami. According to him, they wanted Flores to purposely lose games. Okay, so like purposely lose games to get a higher draft pick. That's typically what happens in the NFL. The owner, the owner, Stephen Ross of the Miami Dolphins, offered him $100,000 for every game he lost. So this is like tampering charges beyond if this is proven true. So that can see a lot with the Dolphins and all that. That's crazy. That's crazy to think. I believe there's another coach that also came out and confirmed that his team was offering him money to lose. I'm not sure if that is true. If both of those are true. I think both teams have denied both of those charges, so that's interesting. But it is very interesting that is the case. Anyway, so the tampering charges were taking place. The GM was mad after and basically Flores obviously didn't take those charges. And so the general manager was mad after he won games late in the year. And the owner, I mean, if proven true, was basically violating tampering rules on many regards. You can't be good. Okay, so that was one of the charges. That isn't really related to racism in itself, but that was one of the things that he wrote. So another thing that Flores talks about in regards to race in this lawsuit is that he alleges that the New York Giants interviewed him for the sake of following the Rudy Rule. Okay, so for those of you that are like, "What the hell is the Rudy Rule?" Let me explain real quick. The Rudy Rule is a rule that takes place within the NFL, within the head coaching and general manager cycles, right? So like positions of power within franchises, and it basically takes place, and it's basically a rule that says you have to by like required to interview. I believe it's at least one minority slash person of color candidate for every role, um, for every executive role that a team conducts. So, like, let's say you fire your head coach, you have to at least interview one minority head coach. So it's kind of like you have to interview at least one minority head coach before you come to your decision as to like what it is. So basically, like what it is it's kind of like affirmative action for colleges, except it's like affirmative action for NFL head coaches and GMs. That's kind of how I like to think about it. It's like giving minority head coaches an opportunity to succeed. And yes, this rule on paper works, but it can also be used to, just like a box to check, right? Like Flores is alleging here that the New York Giants just wanted to check off a box for the sake of checking off the box. And so his evidence behind them basically just calling him for an interview because of the Rooney Rule is because the Giants set up a follow-up interview with him for January the 27th, which was fine, right? It's a follow-up interview. You're going to go interview with them and see if it's a fit, whatever. But they had another guy in mind the whole time. And his evidence with this is that Patriots head coach, Bill Belichick, who's the head coach of another NFL franchise, texted him basically saying, "I heard from Buffalo and the New York Giants that you are the guy." And, Brian Flores was like, "Oh, thanks, coach. Like, congratulations. It's nice hearing from you." And then Brian Flores, to like clear it up, because I guess he got confused. He was like, "This makes no sense." He was like, "Wait, I just want to make sure you're texting. Or he's like, this is Brian Flores. You mean to text Brian Dayball?" And he said, and then Bill Belichick basically confirmed it. Was like, "Oh shit, my bad. Yeah, it was for Brian Dayball." the text was meant for Brian Dayball, who is a white man and who ended up getting the coaching job uh, in New York. And basically, what ended up happening was Dayball got the job in New York on the 23rd, and they already knew that he was going to get the job. This had already been the case, and Flores' interview was scheduled for the 27th. So it was like, oh shit, like what? What? Like so that kind of like, it's like a little sus, right? And they technically checked off the box of interviewing one minority candidate because they scheduled it, but then they came to the conclusion they basically already had their guy in mind at that point. So that's Flores' evidence with that. That is very strong evidence, in my opinion. I think that's the main evidence of his case. And then for suing Denver, he basically said that they acted in a very unprofessional manner. Their executive brass, John Elway, and the rest of his executive team arrived at the interview hungover, an hour late, treated him bad, like unprofessionally, etc., etc. So obviously, all three teams have made a response denying these allegations and making sure that they, cover their ass, I guess, for the time being. I don't necessarily know if they're right. It's innocent until proven guilty. That's the American legal system. So I don't think we can, say whether they were right or wrong. But there is evidence. There is strong evidence that Flores is indeed correct. NFL is also running their own independent investigation, but you know how the NFL is. They're fucking useless, and they've had shit like this happen before, so we'll see what happens. Um, and I guess my thoughts behind this whole thing with Brian Flores is like this, okay? I understand that, like, this has some Colin Kaepernick to it, in that, like, this man is putting his job and his profession on the line to kind of have the greater good and hopefully investigate hiring practices for NFL head coaches and the executive staff. You know, more than it is right now. And there is a lot of Colin Kaepernick in that because Kaepernick had to basically sacrifice his quarterbacking, ability in order to uh, put the message out there that like, hey, like people are literally not giving me a job because of the fact that I'm black and I came out and I spoke out about my issues. Obviously, we talked about what went wrong with Colin Kaepernick on an earlier episode of the show. You should go check that out. But there is some similarities. So I think they're going to handle this Flores situation a little different, right? With Kaepernick, it became this huge media thing. It was a huge disaster by the NFL, and basically they tried to combat it by painting Black Lives Matter in the end zone and trying to promote the fact that they were a players first league and they were there to protect their people of color players, etc., etc. So Colin had to come first, right? And Flores is stepping up for the black coaches and coordinators that need to be promoted and I think he's going to be the face of that, and he's going to be the face of this lawsuit. It's going to be definitely interesting to see how this develops. I'm curious to see how if the NFL has learned something from Colin Kaepernick. I think that's the key here, right? You already had something that happened 10 years in the past. Let's see what they do 10 years in the not even 10 years, like 6 years in the past. So let's see what they do right now, 6 years in the future. And I have a feeling that Flores, if proven right, is going to be um, correct, and there's going to be a lot of. I think it's big for the sake of PR and the sake of the times that we live in. There, I think they're going to have to, accept that Brian Flores is indeed correct, and I think they're going to make some serious changes due to the NFL hiring with the NFL hiring process. I'm not a big fan of the Rooney Rule, like the rule I was suggesting earlier, because I think it's just like I said, I think it's just a box to check for teams, right? It's like, oh, black guy interviewed, check. Like it's what, like what? Like I don't know. It creates a weird stigma in my head that like teams are just interviewing African Americans due to the fact that of their race, not because of their qualifications or the immense expertise that they may have at the head coaching or uh, GM position. I don't know. The rule sticks kind of weird in my head. I really hope they get rid of it. But also, I understand the purpose of the rule because it is an overcorrection due to the fact that there aren't any African American. There's one African American head coach and very few African American executives as well. So obviously want to see more of that considering the league is 80% black and your owners are 100% white. I believe there's not a single black owner. There's not a single black GM, or there is a couple black GMs, and then one black head coach currently employed right now. So that's tough. but it is very like I commend Brian Flores for taking a stand. This is like so much needed. It's very necessary, and I think there are a lot of black coordinators and head coaches and executive staff that very much appreciate the fact that he has taken that stand. And there is only one black head coach that's employed right now, so it is a huge stand. We will see how it all plays out. It's gonna, I guess, play out over the NFL offseason. We'll see if I think teams are gonna probably stay away from Brian Flores for now. I'd be shocked if he was hired within this head coaching cycle. I think they're gonna stay away from him because of the fact that there is a lot of controversy, and teams don't like to associate themselves with drama and all of that. So as we saw with Colin Kaepernick, he was not hired. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, the Rudy Rule, Brian Flores is going to be interesting to kind of see how that head coaching cycle develops and changes over time. So let's see. I can't tell you more, but there is another headline in sports, and the Brian Flores thing was actually the second topic that was added because the first topic that took place happened on Monday, the day before. Um, this or actually this past weekend, it happened. The rumors were released that the GOAT, the greatest football player of all time. There had been rumors coming for the last couple of weeks that the greatest football player of all time was retiring, and eventually it came to the realization that Tom Brady would indeed retire. And so I'm here to talk about it. Tom Brady's retirement. This is big. This is huge, obviously. He's the greatest football player of all time, no questions asked. If he ever and like people who try to argue the fact that Tom Brady is not the GOAT, you're wrong. You're fundamentally wrong. All the statistics prove you otherwise. Like I don't think people should be wasting their breath trying to say that there's some other quarterback. Maybe Mahomes will beat him one day, but that's still a long, long career off. Like Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowl rings. He broken many passing yard records, passing touchdown records with both the Patriots and the Bucks. Has led both franchises to Super Bowls. Like I don't understand what to tell you. This man very much is the greatest player of all time. I think that's pretty sad that he is leaving. And like it is, any great player that leaves a sport and who leaves a mark on a sport, it's sad when they leave. It's going to be hella sad when Steph Curry retires one day. I hope it's not for another 15 years, but it's coming sooner rather than later. I And I think, like, when the greatest player of all time leaves a game, it changes the way the league runs, and I think this is going to be one example. It's gonna be very interesting to see how the NFL kind of goes without Tom Brady. I think they're in great hands because, you know, they have some great quarterbacks and young quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, like, Lamar Jackson, hopefully Trey Lance. They have some great young quarterbacks in the wings waiting and playing some really good football. So I don't think it's gonna like the missing of Tom Brady is just gonna like immediately impact the league, but I think it's gonna be there. I mean, he was kind of the last quarterback in the pocket passer era of football, if you think about it, right? No, I mean Roethlisberger retired. He was kind of in that era. Both Manning brothers are gone. Philip Rivers, Drew Brees, like all of the main like the Brady kind of group, that squad that dominated the squad of like 8 quarterbacks that dominated the league for years is all gone. Tom Brady was the last one standing. Ben Roethlisberger, I mean, was a shell of himself to begin with. So I don't even think we could say that he was standing literally at the end of his run. But I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this whole how Tom Brady's impact on football is seen in the future. Because I think like his style of quarterback is very much dying. You look at the quarterbacks you see today, all of the younger quarterbacks, the Josh Allen, the Patrick Mahomes, they're guys who are good pocket passers, but they get outside the pocket. I think Tom Brady was just one of the best pocket passers of all time. I mean, the best pocket passer of all time because look at him, he's an elite. He's the greatest player of all time. He's won 7 Super Bowls. He's the greatest. He's the greatest pocket passer of all time, and that era of football, I think, in my opinion, is very much dying. And if you want to be a successful quarterback in today's NFL, you need to run outside the pocket. Look what happened with the 49ers. Jimmy Garoppolo is a good pocket passer. He's not bad. He's a B plus pocket passer. But in a league where the pass rushers are coming faster than ever before, in a league where pockets are closing quicker than ever before, and you need to make a quick decision. You need to have a quarterback who can have legs to move outside the pocket. And Tom Brady was really one of the last people in that old school era of like a drop back pass game where you could sit back in the pocket and drop back. Tom Brady was the best at that. He was the best at picking his spots, picking his receivers, and you know going with it. He was great at that. In terms of my personal relationship with Tom Brady, like I never loved Brady, but I didn't hate him. I know people who absolutely adore Tom Brady, uh, and I respect the hell out of them for that. I respect the hell out of them for being Tom Brady fans. That's awesome. But I think if you are not a sports fan, if you are a sports fan, sorry, you have to respect the absolute greatness that this man gave to football. I mean, he won 7 Super Bowls. He's the greatest player of all time. He did it on multiple teams. Like he answered every possible question you could ask him to. There's no debate in my mind that Tom Brady is not the and I think what's interesting about Tom Brady and what I've noticed with this particular generation of Gen Z, like my generation of kids, is that people really tend to judge. Like when I posted, I remember this very clearly last year. I posted a little infographic, or not an infographic, just a picture of like Tom Brady showing his 7 rings on some Bleacher Report shit, and I posted it. And I got several DMs from people basically saying like Tom Brady's a Trump supporter. You can't support him, Anuj. You can't be saying that stuff. I'm like, the fuck? Like, really? Are we really gonna go there? Like, people are judging this man's athletic accomplishments based on his political leanings. Like, dude, you can support whoever the hell you want to support. Aaron Rodgers is an anti-vaxxer, right? But that doesn't take away from the fact he's a great quarterback. Tom Brady is maybe had lunch or hung out with Robert Kraft and Donald Trump and all of this stuff. But that doesn't not make him the greatest quarterback of all time. I I really like it is shocking to me that in this generation we have people that judge athletes based on political correctness, based on political judgments that they make. Athletes, in my opinion, I think when it comes to their accomplishments, should not be judged of who they are off the field, but who they are on the field. I mean, look at Ray Lewis, bro. This man literally like murdered someone, and probably unproven, but everyone knows that it happened. It's like the biggest unset in the NFL. This man like murdered someone in 2002, but people still widely consider him to be the greatest, like one of the greatest linebackers of all time, right? Ben Roethlisberger went on to have a great career, but he's had like 18 sexual assault lawsuits on him. Like, people have done much worse, and people are like, "Thank you," to these athletes. But it's just like I don't know. The big ones in the mainstream tend to just like Tom Brady being a Trump supporter means nothing. Honestly, like he could support Donald Trump all I want, and it's not even proven. I don't even think like he does. Like it was one time he was wearing a MAGA hat back like during 2015, right? And like that's the extent of the proof that Tom Brady is a Trump supporter. Like he's the greatest athlete of all time. I don't care. It doesn't matter, or not greatest athlete, the greatest football player of all time. The goat of football because of the fact that he's had these tremendous accomplishments. And like I said, I kind of hinted at this in the last sentence. Like, do I consider Tom Brady to be the greatest athlete of all time? No, no. I honestly I don't. Um, who do I consider to be the greatest athlete of all time? Well, the guy who won the Australian Open this past weekend, Rafael Nadal. He's accomplished so much. Like football is a team sport, whether you like it or not, and that makes me look at athletes in a different light. Tom Brady has had a fantastic career. Don't get me wrong; he's the greatest football player of all time. But is he the greatest athlete of all time? Look at tennis players. Look at boxers. Look at basketball players. Like I think there are better athletes than Tom Brady, if that makes sense. But I don't think there's a better football player than Tom Brady, in my opinion, in terms of like Super Bowl rings, etc., etc. So statistically, I think he leads in those categories. But I think like in Tom Brady's retirement saga, it's kind of crazy, right? Because like the way this whole thing went down, like still shocks Adam Schefter. I don't like Adam Schefter. I've realized like Adam Schefter just continues to lose my respect thoroughly throughout time. I mean, he had the thing with Aaron Rodgers and the Niners, and during draft day earlier this year. He's just kind of one of these weird stooge journalists that really just, I mean, he kind of like bugs me. honestly. Like he he reports information at specific times to like really, get people riled up. And like I get it, like and that's a very effective strategy to use, particularly in the social media era that we live in today. But like I don't know, dude. Adam Schefter's a little whack. I mean, when he said it, like I knew something was going to happen, something monumentally with Tom Brady was going to happen. But when sports reporters and like I know Kylan Mills like interviewed Tom Brady's dad and said like he's not even decided, like let's relax, let's chill. I feel like what it ended up being was like Adam Schefter kind of just like dug into Tom Brady's personal decision of retirement and said like he's going to retire. That is the final decision, and I'm going to report it before he can. And then, like, in reality, the thing is, I think Tom Brady just wanted to go out on his own terms. And I respect that. You're the greatest player in your sport. I would want to announce my retirement by myself. Retirement is an extremely personal, intimate decision, right? You probably only share that information with like five people, which I mean, I think with Tom Brady right now, he's probably questioning like who the hell, like, you know, leaked that information to Adam Schefter, right? Like, and even made that news, go to the fans before I wanted it to. Um, yeah, I mean, I think this whole Brady situation, like, yes, Adam Schefter was correct, right? He reported it 3 days ago and said that Brady was retired, but it kind of makes him look like an ass. Like, it really makes him look very, very stupid. Like, dude, I mean, like, why would you? I just maybe I look at retirement very differently than other people do, but I think retirement, like I said, is a very personal decision. Like, I feel like NFL insiders should not be like trying to like stooge out information from like personal people to try and get ahead in the journalism game. Like Schefter, Schefter is kind of like Schefter is literally like what he reminded me of in this situation. He's like Gossip Girl. Adam Schefter is the Gossip Girl of the NFL. He's like, oh my god, I need to find out the information before everybody else does, so I can leak it to the internet before everybody is. He's not a fucking journalist. Adam Schefter doesn't actually go through and write articles and talk about different perspectives of teams and football and all of that. He doesn't give a fuck. Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, even Shams Charania and Adrian Wojnarowski in basketball, all to an extent are the gossip girls of their various industry. They don't give a shit about the players. All they care about is getting the information first so that they can report it to the masses. It doesn't really seem like they care about the sport or they care about the inner workings of it. They just care about finding out information quicker than everybody else, and everybody follows them because they get the information the fastest. Any league wide news that's important, they are the ones that report it the quickest. And it's sad that society has kind of trickled and attracted themselves to these freaking like the Rappaports and the Schefters of the world. And I'm not saying they're bad people in real life. I'm sure they're fine, but like in terms of what they do, it's really like I've really questioned the ethics. I think of Adam Schefter and Adrian Wojnarowski and all of these guys because they really just seem like the various gossip girls of the NFL. Just people, an NFL and the NBA, respectively, just people who just report shit. Um, they just try to get the information as fast as possible. Like insider is a code word for fucking gossip, and I don't really like that. I'm not a big fan. Um, of like, digging it, particularly when it's like players' personal shit. Like Adam Schefter has been caught multiple times just like pulling stunts like this. Um, I don't less or so for Wojnarowski and Charania, but I think Schefter and Rappaport in particular are very, very snooty. And it comes off like that if they're reporting as well. And I've seen it. So definitely something to keep a watch out on. Keep a watch out on with these two for sure. Those are our two sports topics for the day. So if you guys were not interested in that, I totally apologize. But a lot has been going on in the NFL. My Niners did lose, and I don't want to acknowledge that. So we're not going to talk about that. So I talked about the two other big headlines that happened um, here in the past week, which was Brian Flores, and then obviously Tom Brady retiring. My personal thing for Tom Brady is like, dude, I mean, I have nothing but respect for the guy. 7 rings, incredible career. Went out on top. He's 44 and he was considered to be an MVP candidate. Yes, did he lose to Detroit? Or sorry, not Detroit. I keep thinking Stafford's at Detroit. Did he lose to LA? Yeah, but also like he was down 27-3, basically tied the game, came all the way back, and came within a few seconds of winning the game. And it was his defense that lost the game, if we're gonna be honest. They put him down that score. They put him in that hole. He came back from that hole, and it was his defense that lost the game with that safety miscommunication at the last play of the game. But we're not going to get into any football right now because that's not the point. We have a lot of pop culture shit to get through, so let's do it. Let's do it! And we have the news. Oh, I can't wait. Okay. You know how Squid Games was super popular back in October? Right? It was like shit. Everyone was like, Squid Game. I want to play Squid Game. Right? Like it's so cool. Mr. Beast made a whole video about it. I think we found the next phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen. It's Wordle. Wordle is the new Squid Games. It's the biggest thing since freaking sliced bread, according to some people, right? And it's a crazy story, actually. I was looking into the story of how like Wordle has kind of taken over the world to a certain extent. I think over 3 million users. It started out with like 50 people playing, and it just kind of exploded into this huge game. This one game has somehow managed to capture the attention of everybody. And there's probably a few people out there who are like, "What the hell is Wordle?" So let me explain. So for those of you that don't know, Wordle is basically this like word game where you are given 6 tries to guess a 5-letter word, and you have to guess. And basically, by the end of the sixth try, you have to guess the full complete word. Um, and basically how it works is like you're given the 6 tries, you enter your first 6-letter word, and the game will give you green shaded letters for if the letter is in the right spot, it's the correct letter of the word. And it'll give you a yellow one when the letter is located somewhere within the word, but you have the letter, but it's located somewhere near in the word, but not in that spot that you have it in. And then you get gray letters for words that are just not for letters that are not involved within this word. So there's 3 different categories. You kind of and you basically play like a guess who with the word until you get the word on a certain try. Typically, it's really hard to get it on the first try because you're basically just guessing. So you kind of like work your way into the word. It's kind of a problem solving exercise to a certain extent. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But I feel like I've seen this before. I've seen word games really blow up for like a month or 2 months, right? Do you remember like Words with Friends a few years ago? It was like the biggest deal. Everybody was playing it. It was basically just Scrabble on the phone. I still play a little bit of Words with Friends. Uh, Funny story. I was playing with my English teacher like a year ago, and I was just getting whooped. Like it was. It's not. Don't do not play Words with Friends with your English teachers, dude. Even if you think you are an English major or humanities major, you're probably gonna lose by 500 points. I think I lost like 500 to 170 or something crazy. Like I got whooped. I will never try an English teacher in any of these word games. They'll probably get it way faster than I will. But I think Wordle is pretty fun. Um, and I think it's cool, like, this whole element of, like, you can share it on social media, right? And it's taking this limited approach to video games in that, like, it's a game that you can only really play once a day, once every 12 hours, I believe. Um, and so it's limited. You can't unlimitedly just go through words. You get one every 12 hours, so it's like you have to wait and wait and wait till the next one, and then you play the next one, and you get one in another 12 hours, etc. Um, so it has that limited approach, but also it's cool because you can share it on social media and it's become kind of this club, right? Because like basically what shows up when you share it on like Twitter or whatever is like it'll be like Wordle 155, like you got it 3 out of 5 tries, and then it'll show like the various squares, like where you got the letters right and like kind of your path to get to the word. Um, and it's become like this kind of weird cult club of people who are playing Wordle and just really enjoying it, which is cool. Like I'm happy. This is a game that kind of like uses your brain, so I'm with it. Uh, the Wordle was invented. I was reading about it. It's invented by this guy by the name of Josh Wardle. And basically, like Wordle is a play on his last name, and he created it for his partner, for something to do during the pandemic. So he was, I guess, he noticed his partner was bored or whatever, and he created this like word game, and he coded it and put it all together. Because it's a very simple design. It's nothing complicated, nothing crazy. He just kind of created it out of nowhere. Just kind of put it together. I guess he had some spare time during the pandemic. This was literally a pandemic project. So like he went from a pandemic project and creating it for his partner to all of a sudden basically like capturing the attention of the world uh, in this crazy way, right? Like a couple days ago, like the New York Times just bought Wordle for I believe a low 7-figure amount. Like you're talking like in the millions of dollars they bought Wordle. Like this guy went from like creating this game for his partner in New York to like just making like probably close to $1 million on it, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, right? Interesting to see like what the New York Times um, did, but like this got me thinking. COVID might have been terrible. COVID was COVID was awful, right? A lot of people lost their lives. It was a terrible pandemic that took place, all of that. But this is kind of one of the examples of where COVID, like, had its bright spots. You had innovation in the weirdest of areas. I mean, it absolutely strengthened during this pandemic. You have games like Wordle that literally were created on a computer, probably in April during peak quarantine, and now have turned, like, the world upside down, right? You have so many people, like, so many YouTubers that have just gone up in views because of the pandemic. You've had I am a pandemic project, right? So, like, everybody pandemic projects are really, taking off and people are not, people are using the time that they have and that they would probably use, doing other things to just create these absolutely amazing pieces of work. And I think that's amazing. Um, obviously I haven't been bought by the New York Times yet. I would love to. New York Times, you know where I'm at. You know where to find me on social media. You can find me anytime you want. I'm, low seven figures works for me. We could go high seven figures. Let's beat Wordle. You know what I'm saying? Let's beat Wordle. Yeah. Um, but yeah, there's been there's like several other projects that obviously I can't list off the top of my head that have really taken off because of this pandemic. And I think it's pretty cool what Josh Wardle ended up doing. Like this is or Josh Wardle ended up doing. It's I think we're whether you like it or not, we're transitioning to more virtual lives now. A lot of jobs have gone remote. A lot of people are kind of staying more at home because of COVID and all of these things. And so we're sort of forced to like live online to a certain extent. And we're gonna have more time because technology is efficiency at the end of the day. So you're gonna have more time to like innovate and create. And you know, that's super exciting. I mean, in terms of like Wordle though, like I do worry about its long-term health, in terms of the fact that like this is a fad and I feel like it's going to, kind of dissipate within a few months. But I think the New York Times will find a way to keep it alive. I feel like this is a concept that they could adapt into something like, how they have like so the New York Times has like the daily crossword and they, that's been relatively successful. They could adapt Wordle into something more something like that, like the word of the day type of thing, and you have 6 tries to guess it and adapt the concept in the computer program into something, which could be very cool. Um, but I think that it'll be alive in some way. But I don't, and I think Josh Wardle just like confirmed his retirement. So congratulations to my boy Josh. Uh, you made it, bro. American dream right there. And I'm sure Josh Wardle doesn't give a shit because he probably was like, "Oh, I just made this for my girlfriend. I made $1 million off of it. All right, move on." And I still probably have a job, so that's cool. So shout out to Josh Wardle, bro. You just made $1 million off a word game that you probably had no idea was going to even achieve the status that it did. So congrats, bro. Much appreciated, man. I hope you do well. So please see this, Josh Wardle. Can you tell me how to turn the Changavi show into Wordle? I would, I would love to take over the world like you would. Anyway, uh, all jokes aside, can we talk about diverse representation? I know everyone's like rolling their eyes, like, "Ugh, Anuj, you talk about this all the time. We get it. You have nuanced takes, okay? Like you're the king of nuanced TikTok. Shut the fuck up. No one cares." Okay, I promise. I'm gonna make this very quick. I'm gonna make this topic very quick. This is just a thought I've been having. Okay, I think diverse representation to a certain extent has gone too far. And the Brian Flores case of all things kind of inspired this train of thought in my head. I feel like we're at a stage where Hollywood is trying to just check boxes. They're trying to just be like, "Oh, Asian role? Ding ding ding. Check. LGBTQ? Check. Adopted? Check." Right? Like they're just looking for different shit and they're like, pretty soon we're just gonna have characters who are like, you know, uh freaking like transgender, triracial, uh, you know, like transgender, triracial, freaking, you know, minority religion type people, right? And it's not for the sake of having an authentic storyline. It's for the sake of being like, oh, like LGBTQ representation, check, check, check. It's checking fucking boxes, and it's really pissing me off, to be honest. It feels like originally when this whole diverse brown wave and the diversity of Hollywood came to be, kind of in the early 20 or like in the mid 2010s. Why are we talking about the 2010s? It's literally been 7 years. Like it was good. It was good. Like it was good. It was coming out with authentic storylines, and Hollywood was promoting those in a very unique way, and I appreciated that. Right, so you had those diverse characters and storylines, but now you're just box checking, and it's forced. It feels more forced than actually authentic, and it's not the real thing. And I'm not even trying to call out particular shows in general. It's just like I've noticed this, right? I'm not saying Shang-Chi is bad. Shang-Chi is probably great, and it's good for the Asian. Like it must have been awesome for the Asian community to see like a superhero who's Asian. I'm sure, right? Eternals was pretty cool for the South Asians. Shout out, Nail. But like, there's a hell of a lot of forced diversity roles now that we're in the society that we're in, and with every overcorrection of society comes an even greater overcorrection in Hollywood. It's just the fact it happens. We can't avoid it. It's right there. And I'm not saying like, listen, like let's go back to creating white roles all the time, white only, right? Like, no, what? Nah, not at all. I'm not trying to say that, but I don't know. Balance has to come. I'm sure it'll happen within the next few years. I'm sure we're just in a box checking phase right now for Hollywood. It'll all moderate at some point. But I guess the reason like this thought came about is because I've really started to see a lot of roles, a lot of Hollywood TV shows, and a lot of Hollywood movies just try to check boxes for the sake of like looking good in the in the mass media and critics, boosting their ratings points like 20%. That also happens, dude. Like you look at a movie with like significant minority representation or significant LGBTQIA plus representation, it's automatically like 30% higher than like a regular movie, you know, with maybe a similar plot line. It's ridiculous. It's like, are we really just gonna hype up diverse representation for the sake of hyping it up, even though like the product may not be good, and so we're just reinforcing this negative cycle of bad representation? I don't know. I don't know. I think we need to do a better job of promoting the authentic actual storylines, like not the ones that are box checking, but more so the ones that are actually trying to create real stories for these communities, like whether that be related to your sexuality, religion, race, whatever. We need to promote those stories, promote those independent filmmakers, whatever, and demo the big studios who are just checking boxes. That's what I'm trying to say, I guess. And I don't know. It's a thought. It's something to consider, and it might be a thought that's a little ahead of the time. I think a lot of people aren't willing to accept that, but it needs to be discussed at this point. I think I've grown kind of sick and tired of this shit. It's pretty bad at this point. So let's look into that. All right, we got 3 topics left, and my computer battery is at 17%. So let's see if we can race against time here. Okay, that was a really. Here's my transition. Joe Rogan. All right, I'm instantly canceled. Everyone's like, "Oh, Joe Rogan? Anuj, you're talking about Joe Rogan? Throw Rogan? You cannot be doing that. Are you serious?" Okay, before y'all get like crazy on me, let's break it down. Okay, Joe Rogan and Spotify have been involved in this weird battle for the last like year and a half, 2 years, or a year and a half or so. Okay, and most of it is related to him posting misinformation. Is Joe Rogan posting misinformation? Yes, I fundamentally believe of that fact. He is posting misinformation. But is he also entitled to his opinion? Absolutely. Yes. 100%. We talked about, and I want to bring this up because we talked about social media and accountability kind of, I think 3 episodes ago with Majority Taylor Greene and her account getting suspended. We kind of talked about sort of that um, level of like accountability when it comes to socials and all of that. And I think we're seeing the same shit with Joe Rogan here. We're seeing social media having a lack of a system to promote this sort of um, just promote like lack of misinformation. And yeah, like I feel like you need to have something like a 3 strike system, and it's coming up again here with Spotify and Joe Rogan. You're in a place where hella people are saying Spotify should ban Joe Rogan, right? And then there's hella people on the other side that are like, no, I'm in the middle. I'm like, yo, let's give Joe Rogan a strike. Let's let's put warnings on his COVID related episodes and be like, bro, you can't be saying this type of stuff because he can't. It's not you can't. You can't be doing that, bro. I don't think Joe Rogan's accurate all the time. This is where the argument like gets into credibility. And I think credibility is so personal to every individual. Every individual has their own personal relationship when it comes to credibility. Credibility is who you trust. And you may trust people based on various things. But I have a specific rule. I have specific rules for who I find credible and who I don't find, right? And so a lot of people put credibility into Joe Rogan. Why? Because he's got a platform and he talks to guests who have credibility, so thus that makes him semi-credible. And so it leads to this whole misinformation argument, right? And actually, like I'm not like a huge Rogan hater. I don't think Joe is as bad as people say. A lot of his interviews are really cool. He takes like a lot of very interesting guests from like you would have never thought and brings them on his podcast and like has them talk about their experiences in life and all of these things. And I think that's really cool. So I'm a fan of how he brings out like cool people, and that's dope. But I feel like people more so know that Rogan is a podcaster, and in reality, like he's a comedian. Like this dude is actually like at the end of the day, like Joe Rogan is a comedian. He doesn't do this for a living. Like he's a stand-up comedian. He does that, and on the side, he kind of interviews people for fun. But this has become kind of his main job and what he's been known for because of the fact that his podcast is absolutely taken off for a variety of reasons. But he is a comedian. Okay, so for my take on credibility, here is what I say when it comes to particular issues. I trust people who are in the various industries that are working on this thing. So, like, let's say there's an issue in Afghanistan. And I want to learn more. Where am I looking? I'm looking at Middle Eastern correspondents for the New York Times, for the Wall Street Journal, whatever newspapers, like credible mainstream media outlets and The Economist. Like I'm looking at all the correspondents and I'm looking at their Twitter and I'm looking at what they're saying. What they say, they're on the ground in Kabul. They're on the ground in Afghanistan. What they say matters. And so you should listen to those people. Scientists, for example, when it comes to the vaccine, they know what's up. They know what they're talking about, all that. Trust people who make it their lives mission to find out things. A lot of correspondents, a lot of journalists who live in these East African countries or, wherever news you might be trying to get, science journalists, health journalists, they do this because they absolutely love it. And and they've been doing it for like 25, 30 years. And there's a reason that, some of the biggest journalism publications in the world have employed that because they make it their lives mission to find out the truth in these various industries. It's a fact. Trust people where the information comes from like nonpartisan media outlets. This is key, right? Because you have a lot of media outlets like MSNBC and CNN to a certain extent, and all of these things that do provide a lot of information, but a lot of it is biased when it comes to like partisanness. And so there might be a certain agenda with these journalists, and a lot of the kind of outlet from where it comes from could be censoring a lot of the information that they provide. So that is also very tough. And don't trust celebrities. This is what I've learned. Like, honestly, do not trust people who make a living off acting or make their main living on stand up comedy, e.g., Joe Rogan, people like that, because it's like the same thing. Like, I wouldn't trust a journalist's opinion on Hollywood. I don't trust. I don't trust the New York Times East African correspondent to make an opinion on a movie. Who do I trust to make an opinion on a movie? I would trust actors. I would trust filmmakers, directors, and people who work in the industry. It's simple. Trust the people who are in the various industries. And that's who I believe should find credible. Anuj rules for credibility. Trademark. Anyway, I think Rogan has become more and more just like unlikable to a certain extent through this whole like COVID vaccine misinformation process. Obviously, the Robert Malone interview, I think, is what really triggered a lot of people. But I do feel like information is a choice. What you consume is a choice. You, as a consumer, have to make a legitimate choice to find outlets that you believe are trustworthy and you believe and you're going to put in a lot of credibility into. If you want to put in the work, and this is what I'm saying, consumers, everybody out there that's listening to this, you have to put in the work to seek out the truth if you can, because no one, no one wants to put in the time these days. I'll put in the time for you. You listen to me, I'll try to give you non-objective, you know, bias. But I encourage everybody, put in the work when it comes to your research about any topic. Put in the work, find resources, find credible news outlets, and trust me, you are going to be much more well informed than if you just click on the first link that you see on Google Images or whatever it is. Just do the work, do the reading. Trust me, you'll become a more informed citizen of not only America, of not only certain issues that you care about, but the world. So that's what I thought. That's what I think. Okay, we're gonna do one more topic because my computer is literally dying, and I'm gonna do this very quickly, and we're gonna skip the last one because it's not important. We can do it on the after show. Okay, so let's go from Joe Rogan and his misinformation to talk about Russia and Ukraine, the capital's misinformation. No kidding. Well, to a certain extent, there are a lot of fake news outlets out in Eastern Europe that come and infiltrate American elections, but that's a whole separate topic. Listen, I know the Russia and Ukraine topic has become a big thing of relevance recently, as Joe Biden has recently introduced about 300,000 troops into Ukraine, or into the Russian Ukraine, or not 300,000 troops, is it? It's something. He basically like promoted a mass influx of troops, which is kind of crazy, and he put it into Russia and Ukraine. Listen, this is a global conflict that could get bad very, very quickly, and I'm going to explain kind of what I mean. So recently, the UN Security Council had a meeting, and they were basically unable to come to an agreement as to what to do. The UN Security Council involves five of the most powerful nations in the world, one of them including China, and then US, I think Great Britain, and a few other countries as well are involved within that. But that's not important. Those five countries are super important, and they're some of the world's leading powers, and they basically could not come up with an agreement as to what to do as the United Nations. Joe Biden has been on the record basically saying that he's been trying to come to the approach of nonstop diplomacy with this issue. But clearly, that's not the case. He's been sending troops. Isn't that right, Anuj? Yeah, it is. He's kind of being a hypocrite to a certain extent. Aren't all politicians? So this is the first time in a while that Ukraine has actually requested foreign support. This is very, very rare. Basically, I think there are a lot of Russian troops. So basically, what's happening is that there are a lot of Russian troops gathered at the border between Russia and Ukraine, and they are ready to invade as soon as possible. Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, and the White House in general have been basically promoting this message to keep going and keep trying diplomacy, but they're trying to make this issue basically Putin versus the world. And if the US aligns with Ukraine, you're basically going into the Cold War part two at this point, right? You're going against Russia and you're using other countries' shit to uh, fight Russia. And it's going to turn into like all of that. Like it's just it's going to be a mess. I feel like if it turns into that. This is and but the Russia Ukraine issue is much more complicated than that, and it goes back to medieval Europe. Medieval Europe is where it all comes back to. Um, and what it really comes down to is hold on, wait, okay. Okay, okay, yeah, my bad. So Kremlin officials are the Russian government are basically saying Ukrainians are Russians, and they don't doubt it. And that attitude stems from medieval Europe. Basically, why is because Russia considers Ukraine to be like its little brother, and that's the attitude that has kind of been of place. Ukraine is kind of like the Afghanistan of Eastern Europe, and Russia and other European powers have consistently taken over Ukraine for a reason. Ukraine basically got independent. First got its independence at the end of World War One, like a lot of other countries did, when the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire both collapsed. And but then it sucked because Poland invaded them, and then eventually Ukraine became a part of the Soviet Union, hence the little brother thing. But it goes way, way back further than that. But I'm going to explain the kind of modern history. Stalin essentially had mass executions that took place in the 30s with Ukrainian peasants that basically refused to participate in his 5-year plans and within communism. And Stalin basically was like, "You're not going to participate. I'm going to execute all of you." So that's what he did, and it basically turned really down bad. Then World War II, they were invaded by Nazi Germany, and 1/6 of the Ukrainian population is dead after World War II for fighting for various, for things, and the whole country was in a mess. And then they got absorbed again by the Soviet Union. And then in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, they gained their own independence. But Russia has still continued to be the big brother and be annoying because they've continued to intervene in their elections. They've managed to put politicians in Ukraine who are pro Kremlin, so pro Russian officials in power so that they still managed to collaborate and intervene and, get their fingers dirty within Ukrainian politics. And essentially what this is it's the latest chapter in the big brother trying to beat up the younger brother. That's what Russia versus Ukraine is. And if Russia does absorb Ukraine, it's kind of crazy to think that they would be an empire and a huge threat to Europe. And at the end of the day, Vladimir Putin is the trigger happy leader behind all of this. So it's not a comforting sight. And that's my analysis on Russia versus Ukraine. Anyway, that's all I got for this episode because my computer's about to die. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate every single one of you. Like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, go hit the follow button. I promise more Russia and Ukraine content on the next episode on the after show. I will do a much better job of explaining this, but my computer is legitimately about to die. So I got to get out of here. I got to jet. Peace, y'all. I hope you guys had an entertaining time. 55 minutes. This is kind of a short episode. So light week on news, but this was fun. Appreciate all of you. See you soon. And once again, Anuj Changavi coming to you live from his parents' house with his dead computer in his lap. I say bye to all of you. Peace.